everyone. Welcome to God, Sex, and Love. It's your girl, Miracle Sims. And tonight I'm going to be chatting with the author of all of these wonderful books. His name is Mike Genung. Friends, I think we're in for a treat, so stay tuned.
You see what I'm about. Not hard to figure out that I'm not the
Okay, Uma Productions. Do better.
Welcome back to God, Sex, and Love. I am here with Mr. Mike Genung. Welcome to God, Sex, and Love, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I had to display all lovely books and things that you sent. I really do appreciate it and everything like that. We have three of them in front of me right now. The Road to Grace, also The Wife's Heart, Healing from Your Husband's Porn Addiction and Adultery, and also The Road Christian, all written by you. So obviously you're an amazing author, right?
Thanks.
But also, from what I'm gathering, that you have a ministry and everything as well. Can you share a little bit more about you and your ministry?
Sure. So Blazing Grace is an international ministry to people who struggle with porn addiction, sex addiction, adultery, any form of sexual sin or bondage. And we also put equal emphasis on the wives, because if the wife doesn't heal, then the marriage can still be lost. And oftentimes the wives get left out of it. So a lot of people, when they hear about a porn problem in the church, the first thing you don't think about is the wife. But usually I tell people the wives are the key to the porn epidemic, because when a man is in bondage, it can take them a long time before they get up the courage to heal or to reach out for help because of the shame and all that's going on. And it's the wife who's going to him and saying, hey, I need you to get help because this is hurting me too much.
Mm-hmm.
And the wife is the one praying for him, pleading for him to get help, and she's traumatized. And so this is just a little piece of why we put equal emphasis on both.
Well, I think that's great. Honestly, I think that is great. Because in a marriage it is, and the two become one. So at the end of the day, yeah, what is affecting the husband is going to affect the wife, and vice versa. So I think that's great that your ministry focuses on both, especially in the healing category, because you're right. They both need to heal.
Yep.
Now I would say, when it comes to this talk about porn, what I'm noticing is people don't necessarily see anything wrong with it. A lot of people don't. Now I've actually spoken with like a survivor of human trafficking, and she shared a little bit more about the porn industry. And I also spoken to someone that has shared some things that his ministry does in regards to porn. However, obviously you're sharing your testimony in the midst of these books and your ministry and everything else. Would you like to share a little bit of that with us today?
You mean my story, or?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I grew up in a Christian home, and like a lot of guys, I got hooked on porn, early on in my youth. And from there, I went from pornography to porn and masturbation, sex with prostitutes, stripper bars, one night stand where I picked up an STD. I was pretty much a mess and threw myself all the way into it. And then in my early 20s, I had an affair with a married mother of three children, broke up their marriage. And so I was a screwed up mess. Plus this was back in the 80s. And, I was getting into drugs a lot too, and alcohol, and getting drunk. And then God started, plus I will share that as a youth in my teens, I had a trusted female adult family member who molested me. So, and this is a Christian, and sexual abuse is a huge problem in the church. So
yes.
I was a pretty big mess. And then around, I don't know, age 23, 24, I was depressed, angry, couldn't figure out why. And God just started calling me back to him. I stopped dating girls. I walked away from the church years ago because, growing up through all the abuse and being molested, I just internalized the idea, if this is what church is about, I don't want any part of that.
Right. Understandable. Yeah, understandable.
And so around 23, 24, I realized I was empty and miserable, stopped dating girls who weren't Christians, stopped the drinking and the partying, but could not kick the porn and masturbation habit. But I figured, well, I'm doing this alone. Am I really hurting anyone? And yeah, I felt crummy afterward, but you know, like most
Mm-hmm.
naive young men, I figured, well, if I get married, that's going to fix my lust problem. So I meet Michelle, the woman I'm going to marry, and then in 1989 we get married. And not only does my lust problem not go away, it compounds and multiplies.
Mm.
Because when we get married, we bring all of our defective coping mechanisms in marriage, and mine was pornography and lust,
Mm-hmm.
and and then plus there's all the strife and conflict between putting two separate people from different screwed up families and different genders. Marriage is tough.
Surprising for sure. Yes, sir.
And
Well,
so,
okay.
oh,
You
sure.
know.
And so just months after we got married, I was binging on porn daily all over again and
Mm,
torn up because she thinks I'm this great Christian guy. We're going to church. She's a believer, but she doesn't know the mess she married. And a year and a half into our marriage, I'm on a business trip, and porno lust always leaves a man or woman emptier than before. And porn wasn't enough one night, and I had sex with a prostitute and committed adultery, and then I was torn up with guilt and shame, and called my wife and told her, and she just started crying and sobbing and saying my name over and over and over again. And I finally realized um, this is hurting more than just me. I've broken my wife's heart.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so I began an 8-year journey on trying to find um, freedom, and I didn't know what I was doing. I started going to support groups. I went to the church to try and get help, and that was a bad experience. I went to a pastor during a marriage conference, and I had never told anybody in the church this before. I walk up to him, and I'm barely looking at the guy in the eye, and I'm in shame. I said, I got this problem with pornography. And before I approached him, he's got this big beaming smile. And then after I mumbled the words, I got a porn problem, the smile vanished. And he got angry, and he just said, just stop doing it. Just stop.
Wow.
And I walked away, and I thought, if it was that simple, I would have just stopped a long time ago.
Right. Right.
And so I'm thinking, I'm done getting help in the church. So I found Sexaholics Anonymous, which was a secular 12-step group based
Mm-hmm.
on AA, and attended those meetings for 8 years. Um, First, as I'm driving to my very first meeting, I got these pictures in my mind of all these sleazy scumbag looking guys and you know child molesters, and I get into the room and I'm shocked. They're all Christians. One had
Mm-hmm.
been a senior pastor, one had been a
Mm-hmm.
youth minister. They are Christians in every level of the church. And this is 1991. I'm thinking, what the heck's going on here? Because
Mm-hmm.
ain't nobody talking about porn and lust and sex.
Mm-hmm.
What the heck's going on? And so then I got a year and a half of abstinence from porn and masturbation. But I went on a business trip and I lost it, fell in a hotel room. And then I got 3 years of abstinence, business trip again, and then I fell again in a hotel room. But this time I did not bounce back. So I spent the next 3, 4 years floundering with porn and masturbation once a month, once every 2 months, once every 3 months. And even though I wasn't binging daily like before, I was still just empty and miserable. Um, there's that hollow place in my heart. I didn't know how to fill, and I spent years in counseling, thousands of dollars, going over a lot of different things, and
Mm-hmm.
going to a lot of sport groups. came up empty. And then I tried what most Christians do to try and fill up the hole. We get busy in ministry, because
Mhm.
that's gonna fill up the hole. That's what I thought. And I get involved with a local rescue mission and still empty. And I'm talking to a guy and I just blurted out. I didn't even know what I was saying. I just blurted out, I feel like I'm looking for God in ministry. And he said, "You're not going to find him there." And then the light bulb finally went on that all my life I've been looking for God, but in all these wrong places. Even in
Mm.
the church hadn't found him.
Mm. Mm.
And
Mm.
then right about that same time, God starts putting all these verses in front of me. If you seek me with all your heart, you will find me.
Mm.
And I realized I'd sought women, I'd sought porn, I'd sought lust, money, success, ministry, Bible knowledge, theology. I could quote verses left and right, but I never sought God himself. So I launched out on an adventure. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't ever heard anything about this, seeking God. I
Mm.
just said, God, I'm hungry for you. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm not going to let go until you reveal yourself to me. And just 2 weeks later, I'm in the book of First John, chapter 4, where it says, God abides in love, and whoever abides in God abides in love. And I just got depressed. I botched that up. God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God.
Mhm.
And I just got depressed, and I said, why is it, Lord, every time I read about your love, I get depressed? And the Holy Spirit spoke immediately, and he said, because you don't believe it. I had a ton of Bible knowledge. I'd done all this stuff in church and ministry. And all my life, God had been saying to me, I love you. And I've been saying, no, you don't. You're cold, you're hard, condemning, out to jump on me the first mistake I make. So in that moment, the Holy Spirit revealed the truth to my heart. And all this incredible love, joy, and peace just burst in and overflowed my heart. I've never experienced anything like that before. And that's what broke me free. And up to that time, I thought, well, going to the Christian life's about being really good, being really nice, and learning your Bible verses and going to church. And that all failed me miserably.
Mm.
So without a passionate love relationship with the Lord, I was empty. And we work with guys and women, and we see the exact same thing, that men and women, 40s, 50s, 60s, into their 80s, who contact us, who are in bondage. Pastors, they have little in the way of connection with the Lord. I got contacted by a guy who was 80 years old in bondage all his life.
Mm.
This is not just a young man's thing. And usually men don't get serious about getting help until they've been married 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And meanwhile, they pretty much destroyed a lot of their life.
Mhm. Mhm.
So part of the message is this is an issue that has to be brought up. It has to be opened up, and we can't run from it. But we can't just say porn is wrong or less is wrong. Don't do it. We have to show people what that means, and that's a big piece of what's missing in the churches. Is anyone can get up from the pulpit and say, "Don't sin." Duh.
Right.
show
Right.
me, show me what to do.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. Man, Mr. Mike, I'm telling you that. Well, first, thank you for your transparency and sharing your testimony right there. So, I mean, goodness gracious, I mean, there's just so many things to touch on with what you said and shared just now. But I think the most beautiful thing is, again, your transparency. Again, you know, obviously it was years in the making. It was a whole process for you to get to where you are now, right? And so, would you say that you're in a free place now? Then?
what I would say is that um, I have the tools and the filling of the Spirit to enable me to say no. And
Mm,
every day I have to make the choices to put my flesh, keep it in the grave.
yes.
So we just moved to Arizona a year ago and from Colorado, and Colorado's a lot cooler, and here it's 105, 115.
Mhm.
So there's a lot more flesh here exposed than what I was used to.
got you.
So I
Okay.
had to work a lot harder and pray a lot more. God, crucify my flesh, crucify my lust, and watch my eyes more than I would in Colorado, where there's a lot less people and a lot less skin.
Got you. Okay. So, and I know you can't necessarily speak for your wife, but I mean, you're still married, correct, and
Oh yeah.
everything. And so over the because I did look at your literature, and so it seems like the the wife that you were referring to is the same wife,
Mhm.
correct? And so, I mean, well, one, again, that's a beautiful thing. I know, I spoke with a wife recently, but she was talking about a husband that was going through like depression and alcoholism and things like that. And I'm not saying it is the exact same type of situation, but obviously she was talking from a wife's perspective of how it was for her to, go through those things and then seek help again for her to assist with him and everything. Again, they both go hand in hand. So ha- having your wife there by your side through all of this, like how was that for you to have her there?
Well, when we were going through the healing process,
Yes, sir.
yeah, it was. Well, I'll just say it this way: the night that I told her I committed adultery, that phone call still tears my guts out today.
Mm,
There's times when I said things stupid and maybe she got upset or maybe she cried a little, but I've never heard anybody cry from the depths of their core like when I heard her sob that night.
mm,
And so we had a years long road to recovery. Rebuilding trust takes a long time. And a lot of people make a big mistake. A lot of men make a big mistake because they think, oh, she's gonna get over this in 2 or 3 months and we're good. And what they don't realize is the most precious, sacred place in her heart that she gave to her husband has been shattered. That does not pop back in a couple months. That takes
right.
years and sometimes even a decade or two after that, that wound can surface again. So
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn to be patient, and by God's grace, I never say anything stupid like, when are you going to get over this? But there are a lot of husbands that do,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
we hear from wives. So one of the things for men to realize is that you got a process of years in front of you of healing. And saying something like, when are you going to get over this, is very damaging and
Mm-hmm.
borderline abusive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because what you're really saying is her heart doesn't matter when you say something like that.
Right, right. And I'm sure this is a hard place to, a hard section of your life to talk about. So that's where if if it's difficult or something. Um, I mean, it did kind of make me think like, well, I guess my question went away. Maybe I'm not supposed to ask. Maybe I'm not supposed to ask. Maybe it's too deep. But okay. Well, moving on from that, then. So the start of your ministry, because obviously, you were going through things, with different ministries. You tried to talk to pastors. You tried to go to churches. You tried to, get the help that we all think we're supposed to do, because the church is supposed to be the hospital and all these different things. But obviously, we're flawed, right? We are flawed just like any other system. So what transitioned from trying to seek help in those places, then you actually getting the help and now having a ministry of your own? Like, well, I know that's a lot. That probably was like a lot of years that I'm trying to get information about. But yeah, I guess like what took you from that moment of, okay, I don't have help in the church, to now having your own ministry? Well,
Well, what happened was, after God revealed himself to me in 99, I had all this joy and I had this hunger to help people with this, but I assumed that I was a freak, because when you don't hear sex discussed, then I just think I must be the only one, and I must have been a nut job freak, sex pervert. And then I started doing all this research and finding out that's when Promise Keepers was hitting their stride, and they started taking surveys. They would have their 50,000 men stadium events, and they would do a survey as the guys are walking out of the stadium. And one of the questions, when's the last time you looked at porn and they got the shock of their life when they found out that half of Christian men have been viewing porn within whatever, 2 months. So I'm thinking half, how can this be half when we don't talk about this?
And don't talk about it like you just, man. I mean, that's the interesting thing that you're bringing that up, because I think for me, that's what GSL is in regards to being able to just talk about God, sex, love, and all this stuff in a free open space, because again, it gets swept under the rug, and then we live life and pretend and everything like that, and then at the end of the day, we're dealing with all these issues behind the scenes. And then, like you say, a lot of times people feel alone. They feel like, okay, no one else is going through this. How can I get help? Do I even need help? Again, a lot of people, from what I'm observing, people don't even see the issue with it until, I mean, I guess it's too late, like what you were explaining in your testimony, that maybe it didn't necessarily hit home until the moment you share with your wife. So, well, my question just came back. I don't know. Well, I was going to ask, do you feel, so you feel at that time with you sharing what happened with her and confessing that, was that like the turning point? And do you feel like that was the best thing for you to do, rather than like trying to sweep it under the rug and hide it and things like that? Because I mean, for me, just listening to the story, it seems like that was a crossroads right there, because you could have kept that to you and took it to your grave, as some people would say. But then we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now. You probably would still be in that dark place. So, what do you think? Like, as the actual person, that's just me making an observation.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. You're right on, because then I had a choice. If I'd have kept going, I would have lost my marriage. And then who knows because women can only take so much pain, even though I hear a lot of wives who they put up with it for years. A lot of women are pretty strong and tough, even though they think they're fragile and broken. A lot of women, they'll wait years. I'm talking 5, 10 years praying for their husband before he does anything to get help. And then, but yeah, you're right. Because if I had not have gotten help, I would have stayed in bondage to it. And that's the dangerous thing about this, is when you continue to walk in it, it will harden your heart into a rock. And then anything can happen. And guys have crossed gender lines, no issues with homosexual lust, but they cross gender lines because looking at female porn just got boring. Or some guys end up going to jail and ruining their life because they get exposed to child porn somewhere along the line, and does a vicious, evil thing. And I don't know if you know this, but every single week, and sometimes even every day in America, somebody in a trusted leadership position in a church is arrested for child porn. So this has got a grip at every level of the church.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have been hearing like staggering statistics about, like I said, trafficking and all of this stuff. Again, the survivor that I spoke with, she shed a little bit more light, because I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I've never seen porn before either, and what I was sharing with people that I've had this conversation with, the porn conversation, is that the times that I did look, it just, like, after I get past the whole, okay, I'm turned on, then it would get to the point where I'm like looking at their eyes, and I'm looking at, and there was like something missing. It was like not, you know what I mean? It was like, okay, this lady doesn't seem to be enjoying this, or whatever the case was. And then come to find out, again, with me having a conversation with the young lady, she's sharing how majority of the people in that industry are trafficked. You know what I mean? They're not there by their own will, which is the opposite of what you hear, because a lot of times you hear about, I guess the stars or the people that are like, oh yeah, I do this and this is what I do, and X, Y, and Z. But from, again, that this is her account and her testimony, is that I guess what she's witnessed is majority of the people that are in that industry aren't there for, for their own will, or whatever the case is, or by their own will. And for me, it's like, again, I could say that I could kind of see that, as before I knew that, it was like something didn't click to me, that it was like, consensual or really in being enjoyed or whatever. But then I don't know, because maybe I'm a woman and looking at, looking at people's eyes and stuff. But but I mean, I don't know. That was just a little bit of one of the conversations I had with the lady that was again a survivor and everything like that. And yeah, I mean, when you talk about the child porn and all of that as well, it's just it's a, I mean, yeah, it's deep. I guess I would say definitely seems to be a lot more going on than people realize. So
Yeah, I've talked with ex-porn actresses and actors, and one woman said she hated the guys that she was doing that with, and that a lot of the women are stoned or drunk out of their mind before they do that. And oftentimes she said you would hear women vomiting before they would do the scene, and tearing of female genitals and the rectum is common. And even when they tear, they have to keep going. So, I mean, it's not, there's no, there's no, I'm having, you watch them, you think they're having the time of your life, but what you're watching is rape and somebody being destroyed on camera. And then a lot of porn actors and actresses end up dying early. They go through a lot of trauma. A lot of them are on drugs, heroin, and now recently, not too long ago, there's been a stream of porn actresses that are dying in their 20s from different things. So
wow.
It's a destructive product, and it kills those who watch it too.
Yeah, I'm hearing about a lot of different companies that are getting kind of, not, I guess, all the way shut down, but like different things are getting at least out to the public more. You know what I mean? Like there's organizations that are like trying to either get things shut down or, all of that. But I mean, I guess that's another side of things. But you're on the ministry side, you're on the healing side. So we can, I guess, focus on those that are, you focus on that, I guess. So when it comes to these, are any of these your first book?
The Road to Grace is my first book.
Very first book. All right, Road to Grace. I know it says here it features biblical methods for overcoming sexual temptation, healing from shame, how to stop the masturbation habit, and much, much more. So this is your first book. I mean, obviously, I'm sure you can't tell us everything that's in it, but I mean, genuinely, like, I can't say what made you write it, but I guess a little tidbit behind your writing of this, and then a little bit of your why, even though, I mean, obviously I already know why, but still.
Well, actually what happened was in 2000, I started the ministry, and back then it was only just me leading a Christ-centered support group for men. And then my sister, who's more of a Buddhist than anything else, said, hey, I noticed you're writing a lot. You should put all your writings up on a website. So I thought, all right. So in 2004, I put the Blazing Grace website up, and I'm suddenly getting emails from all over the place. And 60 to 70% of them are from wives.
Wow.
So the shocking thing to me was in the very, I thought this is going to be a men's ministry, but I found myself having prayer meetings with, groups of wives, and then as I'm going along, I'm saying, you know what, I should dive into a book here and get in more depth with people. And so that led to it, but I didn't know much about writing books. It's a lot of work, but also you need to write for the reader and not for yourself. So I actually I wrote that first book 3 times. The first one was garbage, and I wouldn't show it to anyone.
Oh goodness.
And then the second time was better, but then it still wasn't right. And the third time, okay, this is on it. And
felt good about that one.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's a good segue into this one right here, The Wife's Heart, because obviously, let me just, without me asking, well, because you were already talking to women, so you might as well write them a book. Am I right? But I mean, is there what else here? Like, I mean, okay, the first topic here I see on here, it says understanding your husband and everything like that. That's amazing. Did your wife co-write any of this for you or
Mm.
with you? No. Okay. No pressure to the wife. No pressure. So it's not like you got like any of her feedback or things on her end. She's not necessarily comfortable talking about it.
Nah, I mean, when I started ministry 20 years ago, I think her first response was, "Why do you need to do that?"
Oh goodness.
So
But she sees now, right? Yeah, I'm sure she sees.
she's fine with me doing it. She just don't want to be involved with it, which is fine. So
Yeah, I understand. I know the other lady I was speaking to that I told you about, the lady that was sharing about her husband and alcoholism and things like that. Um, she was saying some, I guess, some similar things at one point. Well, she said her husband supported, um, but he doesn't. Well, maybe one day they'll start working together on it as well. Because I mean, it probably is a powerful thing to hear both sides of the story, but no pressure, of course, to your wife or nobody else that goes through it. Because obviously, what she was sharing as from the wife's perspective of witnessing things in her husband that she couldn't necessarily help or whatever the case was that it just was hard to, obviously, again, she saw physically that some things were, affecting her. She's like, I think she was saying that she was going out and getting hives and things like that. But it was her husband that was the one that was first. It was her husband that was the one that was going through the, alcoholism and everything. So, yeah, sometimes I get it that maybe, as the other half is, I mean, hey, my husband still haven't been on GSL yet, and we've been, it's like, when you gonna be on the show? And so then when it comes to this one, then the Rogue Christian, is this a more recent one here?
yeah, and what brought that out was years of talking and counseling to believers. I kept seeing the same themes. One is that most Christians are isolated. So usually the first thing they say out of their mouth is, "I have no one to talk to." So statistics show that 80 to 90% of American Christians are isolated. And how can it be that a 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old who's been in church for decades and knows the word of God is isolated? So that means we got the knowledge, but we're not doing what it says to do in the book. And so what that comes down to is every single believer should be meeting with another believer once a week for the purpose of prayer and support, encouragement, accountability. But most Christians aren't. A lot of Christians don't have a prayer life, and they don't have a passionate love relationship with the Lord. And they have a lot of Bible knowledge, but usually when I'm working with people, I start delving into what's going on in their heart. There's a disconnect there from the knowledge into the beliefs in the heart. And people were telling us they don't even know how to draw near to God. And one of the questions we ask people is, when is the last time you spent an hour alone with the Lord in silence? And 90% of men say never, or it's been a long time. And with women, it's usually quite a bit more, 50 to 60%. So I kept hearing all these things over the years. Hey, churches aren't talking about and equipping us and talking about not only sex, but the other things in life they're struggling with. I mean, suicide and mental health problems. And meanwhile, the culture is collapsing. And there's like this disconnect Sunday morning where it's like nobody's, the country's collapsing. They were burning down buildings last year. And it's like, nobody doing anything, saying anything about it. It's like we're in a fairy tale world or something.
It's so true. It is so true. Everything that you just shared right there is definitely true. I know for me, one of the things, and I'm not just trying to plug my book or anything like that, but one of the things for me, in April of last year, when I first kicked off the podcast version of this, one of my challenges to myself was to, take some accountability. I'm like, okay, Miracle, you need Bible study. You need to pray more. You need to spend time with God. Like, and now this is a pandemic. You literally don't have anything else to do. Why not? Because I was one of those people that running around here, there, doing this job, doing that job. Then I just, I have my 2-year-old son now, so that's a whole other thing. Going through pregnancy and all that stuff for the first time, and not knowing like what life is going to look like once he got here, and everything like that. And so I could share my whole testimony another time. But what I'm saying is, it led to me challenging myself to at least Bible study every day, right? Because I think at that time all I was getting was like whatever the Bible verse of the day was on the Bible app. It's like, you got to do better than this. You can, and you should. And so since then, something I just happened to call Daily Dose of Inspiration, and has literally become like something I do every day. And so I just created the journal that I have or whatever, and it is my first publication. But that's amazing too, because Lord knows I've had so many ideas over the years where it's like I could have been put out. Well, I didn't know how to publish, but I could have had so many things be the first, is what I'm saying. But the fact that it's like a journal that's helping people to create their own Bible study experience, just to challenge themselves to do this every day, at least for 30 days. I feel like that meant a lot. At the end of the day, when I did do it, I was like, wow, this is an amazing first book or journal or whatever the case is. And so, and since then, I mean, it's been over a year now that I've done it. And, honestly, I don't do Sundays, but like Monday through Saturday, I'll get up at 4 and be intentional about doing this Bible study thing. And that's the craziest thing too, because when I called it Daily Dose of Inspiration, I was like, it just was a name, And I would ask myself, like, I didn't ask myself, I asked God, I was like, am I really going to have something to talk about every day? Like, but he really has given me something to either study and talk about every day on this podcast. And it's been a crazy experience, but it's been a blessing too. Not just because I wrote the journal, but also because like, just what I'm getting every day by taking that time and being intentional about, like you say, I mean, maybe I could, maybe that's the next challenge. Maybe I could try just an hour, just to not say nothing and just really, really let him speak. Which, I mean, I guess that, anyway. But yeah, I think it's very important that we, like you say, do that for ourselves as well as the fellowship, right? A lot of people have issue with church, and because they go through church hurt. I mean, obviously the things that you shared as well could turn people away for good, right? And so with that being said, so what would you say to those individuals that either they feel like they don't need church, or I've gone through too much with the church that at the end of the day, it's not something that I need, or whatever the case is, as somebody that I'm assuming, maybe I should ask first, what has your journey been like with that? Because obviously, again, you share things saying that the church was not always good to you, at least times when you needed them and things like that. And so how did you, obviously you drew near to God, but then like, how does that relate to you and your church experience now?
Well, the early church, Acts 2:42, they were devoted to prayer, fellowship, and the word. And we are commanded not to neglect the meeting. I forget where that is, maybe 1st and 2nd Corinthians. So we're commanded to be part of a church body. And so I still go to church and, love going to church and being a part of it. We're in between right now looking for another one. I would really love to find a church that actually spends time in prayer, but that is really hard to find in America.
Oh man, it's so crazy. Like, it's funny because there's a gentleman that I follow online. I don't know if you might be familiar with him or not, but his name is David Lynn, and he's up in Canada. And I know they planted some churches in the States, but I don't think they have one here where I am. But that's the craziest thing. Like, you would think that Christians, right, would be Bible believing churches, but nah, it's like you have to get real specific, right? You have to look for like you say, prayer, Bible believing church. Like, I guess that just shows how off that we are from Bible. Because even with my Bible study that I do, I'm sitting here like asking that question all the time, like, why don't we do what's in here? Like, it's so plain, like, it's so clear, like, And for me, I'm looking at it like, we don't do this. We do not do this. Oh, you
You
know,
got it.
goodness gracious. So when you said it earlier, I was like, I say the same thing all the time. But oh man, it's so what can we do? What can we do?
Well, and that's in the book, The Real Christian, where I really challenge churches to do that, to do what you just said. Okay, don't just study the Bible, do what it says. And Jesus said, affirm, my house shall be a house of prayer, not teaching, not a rock band. My house should be a house of prayer for all generations. The church be built on prayer, not teaching, and certainly not a rock band. And then all through the book of Acts, their meetings, they began with prayer meetings, and all through the book of Acts, you see them praying with fervent, passionate prayer. And when they did that, they changed the world. We don't pray, and the world is stampeding and steamrolling us right now. No man and no church is greater than their prayer life. So I go alone to the desert for a day or two alone with the Lord, maybe once every 2 or 3 months, and just soak in prayer for about 1 or 2 days. And that's what Jesus did.
Wow.
Because
Yeah.
being in a ministry, there's a lot of output, but Jesus modeled for us. He wouldn't go away alone. How did he prepare for ministry? It wasn't in Bible college. It's 40 days alone in the desert. Because prayer is where the power is, and that's why we become so powerless in our churches.
Man, come on, look, go on and speak, Pastor Mike. Did I just give you a title? Look, I guess it sounds like there's some good things that are coming out of being in Arizona. Then, the desert's right there. You can feel like that one-on-one with God. I love that. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Even with me in my situation, I've come to really enjoy the time that I've dedicated, even if it's like from 4 a.m. because I try to or my podcast out by 6, so it's like between 4 and 5 or whatever. I try to just really, really dedicate that time. And sometimes I get distracted. Sometimes, and I'm honest about that on the podcast and stuff too. But for the most part, again, I'm glad. I'm glad that I've done it. I'm glad that something came from it. Not only just doing it over a year now, but then it was a lifestyle change, right? It was one of those things where it was like I would think about it all the time. I was like, oh, I want to work out, or I want to pray more. I want to do. And then it's like it went from thinking those things to actually doing it. So I feel like, well, oh Lord, I don't know why we're getting on this. I just feel like we have more power over our minds than we think, and we should exercise that a little bit more. Like, we have to make the decision to do whatever it is. And then, like you said earlier, to every day, pray and seek God and get his help with the things that we need help with. Going and hold on to vision and everything like that. So well, I commend you for everything that you've done. I commend you for where you are right now. And I pray that you keep it going, because obviously, a lot of fruit has come from it, not just your books, but it seems like, the people that you've been able to reach and everything like that. But if I don't want to be long your time, so if there's anything that when you said, hey, I want to be on that GSL, that God, Sex, and Love, when you to join me for conversation today, is there anything that you want to share with the people before I let you go? Like anything that was like, I definitely have to say this.
I would just challenge each believer to spend an hour in prayer every day at a minimum. It is so powerful. And I, in the early part of my walk, my prayers are a lot of ritual. God, cleanse me, heal me, change me, me. But he's showed me so much. And so now when I spend time in prayer, there's a lot of worship and resting and listening. But it's a mindset of, God, I'm going to go after you for the rest of my life. And Bible knowledge is just the very beginning. It's when we do what's in the book, like you said, that's when the Christian life comes alive. So thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for joining me today. And again, I appreciate your transparency. I mean, obviously, the people can find your books and else. Where would you like them to go?
Blazinggrace.org. They can get the books and learn about us.
Learn more about the ministry for the men and the women, everybody. Thank you so much, Mr. Mike.
Thank you.
To triumph, you must know the way. It is your story to tell. They only see what you want them to see. They only hear what you want them to hear. It is in this moment that you are listening to a paid voiceover with stock footage. But I am really just a tattooed white dad that launched his own marketing firm and is in no way as cool as this guy. But I triumph because I know the way. Okay, Uma Productions. Do better.
Thank you so much, Sex and Love, and thank you to Mr. Mike Genung for sharing his testimony tonight. I hope that you all enjoyed it and that you are encouraged and inspired. Feel free again to check out blazinggrace.com.